So, what happens when you strip an entire sports league of, its history, like its momentum and all those bitter rivalries, and you just reduce every single team down to exactly 4 specific numbers?
Right, yeah, you're just left with, well, pure, unyielding statistical DNA.
Exactly, just pure math. And today, we are taking a deep dive into the exact structural blueprints for AFT Dice Season 12.
Yes, we are.
We have the official preview data right here, and we are mapping out the math specifically for round 16.
And, the timeline is really the first piece of leverage you have here as a listener.
Oh, absolutely.
Because today is Friday, April 17, 2026.
Yeah.
But round 16, well, it doesn't actually kick off until Thursday, April 30, 2026.
Which is what, like a nearly 2-week window?
Exactly. It's a 13-day window of just pure anticipation. You have 13 days to really look at these venues, weigh these matchups, and try to decode these highly specific 4-digit sequences.
The picture sequences.
Right, the picture sequences that are assigned to all 18 teams.
Okay, let's unpack this because, to the untrained eye, looking at a schedule filled with sequences like 17-4-11-0, it just looks like a massive spreadsheet.
Yeah, it looks like a typo to some people.
Right. So we really have to establish the mechanical premise of AFT Dice first, because these aren't random grades, right? They aren't win-loss records.
No, not at all.
They actually represent a team's real operational engine across 4 distinct phases of a match.
They are the literal dice pools and the modifier thresholds a team brings into the arena.
Break that down for us a bit.
Sure. So the first digit, that's their opening strike weight.
Which is just raw power, right?
Exactly. It's the raw offensive pressure they can apply right at the start of the game. Then the second digit is their attrition or, resistance.
How well they can take a hit.
Yeah, how well they grind the game down and absorb damage. The third digit is closing stamina. And then you have that fourth digit.
The weird one.
Right? That crucial, mysterious fourth digit is the anomaly or the clutch modifier. And the thing is, you don't just add these up. You don't just compare the total sum.
No, because they trigger at different times.
Exactly. You have to watch how the different phases violently interact with each other throughout the match.
Which brings us perfectly to the extremes of Season 12.
Oh, the extremes are wild this round.
They really are, because to really understand what round 16 is going to demand of us, we need to look at the Titans and the underdogs.
The absolute top and bottom.
Yeah, the matchups where the statistical disparity in that very first digit, that opening strike weight, is just absolutely staggering.
And we are heading straight to Marvel Stadium for these.
Marvel Stadium is just going to be brutal.
It really is. It is essentially serving as the testing ground for structural integrity this round.
Because the numbers here are terrifying. Okay, so we have St. Kilda walking into Marvel Stadium with a picture sequence of 17-4-11-0.
A massive 17 in that opening strike slot.
Right, a 17. And then you look at their opponent. The West Coast Eagles are walking in with a picture of 1-10-5-0.
A leading one.
A 1. That's incredible. And it happens again at the exact same venue.
Yeah, the double hitter of doom.
Exactly. The Western Bulldogs boast an 18-4-11-0, and they're taking on North Melbourne, who brings a 7-8-7-0.
What's fascinating here is the sheer gravitational pull of an 18, right? Or a 17 leading the sequence against a 1 or a 7. It completely dictates the psychological landscape of the match.
Oh, I can't even imagine being in the stadium for that.
Right, because Marvel Stadium is a fast and closed track. It naturally amplifies early momentum. So if you are sitting in the stands watching St. Kilda roll a 17 dice pool against West Coast single die. Yeah, just one. In that opening phase, you are basically watching an avalanche hit a barricade.
Okay, but I have to push back on the viability of this for a second. Because, conceptually, how does a team with a 1-10-5-0 picture even approach a match like that? Comparing a 17 or an 18 to a 1, it's like pitting a supercomputer against a broken pocket calculator.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Right. So when your opening offensive capability is outmatched 17-1, do you just, accept the math and hope the dice completely malfunction for the opponent?
Well, no. What's fascinating here is that the math actually provides a highly specific survival route.
Really? A survival route against a 17?
Yes, provided the underdog really understands their own sequence. You don't fight the 17. You can't.
Because you just get crushed.
Exactly. You look at the internal mechanics of your second slot, the attrition phase.
Oh, okay, wait. West Coast has a 10 there.
Right.
And St. Kilda only has a 4.
Precisely. St. Kilda is a glass cannon. They rely entirely on that massive first phase strike to just, secure an insurmountable lead.
So if they don't knock you out early,
They're in trouble. If West Coast tries to go blow for blow early, they get obliterated. Their entire strategy has to be damage mitigation.
just turtle up.
Right.
Yeah.
They must sacrifice early positioning to drag St. Kilda into the deep water of the second phase. Because if West Coast survives that opening barrage, they suddenly hold a massive 10-4 advantage in the grinding defensive trenches.
Oh, wow. It's like a boxer covering up and just absorbing a brutal first-round flurry, just trying to exhaust and knock out artists so they can take them into the later rounds.
That is exactly what it is. It paints a pretty grim picture for the opening minutes. But it proves that an underdog with a heavy second digit isn't technically dead on arrival.
Right.
It forces you, as the listener tracking these games, to really watch for those transition points. The exact moment the game shifts from Phase 1 to Phase 2 at Marvel Stadium is when the underdog either completely collapses or they entirely flip the script.
That is going to be so intense to watch. But, okay, we've seen what happens when a massive leading number tries to crush a small one.
The avalanche.
Right. But that raw power changes completely when it's met with equal force. So the conversation has to shift to the blockbuster battles.
The heavyweights.
Yeah, the high-level collisions where both teams are actually bringing double-digit strike weights to the opening bounds.
This is where the sequences get incredibly tight. You have massive numbers starting to push against equal resistance. It's really the upper echelon of the data set.
Let's lay out the heavyweight division for everyone. We've got the Geelong Cats taking on the Gold Coast Suns at GMHBA Stadium.
Massive game.
Yeah, Geelong brings a 16-5-10-0 sequence. Gold Coast counters with an 11-8-7-0.
Two big openers.
Exactly. And over at the SCG, the Sydney Swans with a 5-9-6 arrow faceoff against Melbourne, who brings a dominating 14-6-9-0.
Right.
But the matchup I really want to tear apart is happening at Optus Stadium.
Oh, this is the one.
It is. Fremantle boasts a heavy 15-6-9-0. And they are hosting the GWS Giants, who bring a 13-6-8-1.
Just notice the structural similarities in that Optus Stadium matchup. A 15 hitting a 13 in the opening phase.
Huge number.
Right. A 6 hitting a 6 in the attrition phase. A 9 hitting an 8 in stamina. The leading numbers are so functionally massive that their sheer force almost cancels out.
They just bounce off each other.
Exactly. A 15 rolling against a 13 is just two heavyweights neutralizing each other's momentum.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. Look at the final digit in that GWS Giants sequence.
The 1.
Yes, because think about the data we've covered so far. St. Kilda, West Coast, Bulldogs, North Melbourne, Geelong, Gold Coast, Sydney, Melbourne. Every single one of them ends their sequence with a 0.
A flat 0.
But the GWS Giants end with a 1 in that fourth slot.
The pattern breaks.
Right.
That 0, for all those other teams, it represents a closed circuit. It's a team whose entire statistical identity is basically wrapped up in the first 3 primary phases of the game.
So when Phase 3 ends, they're done.
Exactly. Once they reach the end of their stamina, they have absolutely nothing left to draw from.
So in a clash of titans, right, where the first 3 phases are basically deadlocks, like 15 versus 13, 6 versus 6, 9 versus 8, is that trailing one of the ultimate wildcard? Like, does that single anomaly digit fundamentally change the chemistry of a heavyweight fight?
Oh, absolutely. It acts as a mechanical failsafe. In AFT Dice, that fourth slot, the clutch modifier, it only activates in extreme tie-break scenarios or late-stage momentum shifts.
Only at the very end.
Right. Think of it like a heavier gear ratio on a bicycle. When you are speeding along on flat ground during the early phases of the game, you don't even notice it.
You're just cruising.
Yeah. But when the match turns into this grueling, deadlocked uphill climb in the final minutes, that 1 gives the Giants traction that Fremantle simply does not possess.
Oh, wow. So Fremantle might win the opening exchanges by a fraction with their 15 over the 13?
Sure, they might get an early lead.
But if GWS manages to grind the match down to the absolute wire at Optus Stadium, they have a tool in their sequence that Fremantle is legally barred from accessing.
Because they have a 0.
Exactly. The overt power of the double digits creates the spectacle, the fireworks early on, but the hidden potential of that fourth digit anomaly actually decides the outcome.
And it forces a complete strategic pivot for Fremantle. Because, knowing GWS has that trailing 1, Fremantle cannot afford a close game.
They have to blow them out.
They have to. They must use their slight advantages in the first and third phases to build a massive buffer. Because if they allow the game to reach a state where that fourth digit modifier activates, they are mathematically at a huge disadvantage.
It makes that game an absolute must-watch.
Oh, for sure.
But, as thrilling as the top of the table is watching the 16s and 15s just throw their weight around, I think the true chaotic heart of round 16 actually lies in the middle-tier gridlocks.
And the basement scraps.
Yes, the desperate basement scraps.
Because the margins at the bottom of the dataset are just incredibly thin. The sequences are fragile, which paradoxically makes the gameplay far more volatile.
Okay, let's look at the absolute bottom of the barrel then. Richmond versus Essendon at the MCG.
This is a fascinating one.
It really is. Richmond is walking in with a picture of 3-10-5-0. Essendon brings a 2-10-5-0.
Wow.
Right. Just let the mechanics of that sink in. Their second, third, and fourth digits are literally identical.
A 10 for attrition, a 5 for stamina, and a 0 for clutch.
The only difference in the entire sequence is Richmond has a 3 in the opening strike, and Essendon has a 2.
It is remarkable structural symmetry, but, operating at the lowest possible offensive volume.
So what does this all mean? I mean, it's like looking in a dirty mirror. You have two teams completely depleted of any early strike power, bringing massive 10s in their attrition phase.
Yep.
Are we just watching a 12-round boxing match where neither fighter throws a punch and they just lean on each other for 2 hours? Like, is this going to be the most boring game of the round or the most desperate?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, you'll realize that these low-volume, highly symmetrical matches are where the core engine of AFT Dice is most exposed.
How so?
Because when you lack a massive 18 to just bulldoze an opponent, the game is won or lost on agonizingly slim tactical decisions.
Every single roll matters.
Exactly. Both teams know they can't attack. Both teams know they are designed to grind. So it becomes this intense tactical stalemate in the mud at the MCG, where a single successful dice roll in that opening 3 versus 2 phase might be enough to win the entire game.
Oh, because neither team has the offensive capability to mount a comeback once they fall behind.
Right. If you go down by even a little bit early, good luck grinding back with a 2 or a 3.
That is incredibly tense. And we see similar structural gridlocks in the middle of the pack, right? Like the Adelaide Crows at 8-8-7-0-0 host the Brisbane Lions at 10-8-7-0 at the Adelaide Oval.
Yeah. Again, the back halves of those sequences are perfectly mirrored. An 8 for attrition, a 7 for stamina, a 0 for clutch.
It's identical.
So the entire contest hinges purely on Brisbane's 10 pushing against Adelaide's 8 in that opening phase. It just isolates the variables beautifully.
But the deeper you dig into these middle-tier matchups, the more the sequences start to, fracture.
Get messy.
Very messy. We establish how dangerous the GWS Giants trailing 1 is, but look at Collingwood. They are taking on Carlton at the MCG.
Right.
Carlton brings a clean 12-7-8-0, but Collingwood counters with the 6-8-6-1.
Another trailing one in the clutch slot.
Right. It just pops up out of nowhere. And then there's Hawthorn.
Oh, Hawthorn. Hawthorn is the most dangerous anomaly in round 16.
Absolutely. So they are returning us to Marvel Stadium to play Port Adelaide. Now, Port Adelaide brings a messy but pretty standard 4-9-6-0.
Okay, sure.
But Hawthorn brings a 9-7-6-2.
A 2.
A 2. They have a 2 in the 4th slot.
It's unbelievable.
They are the only team in the entire preview data with a modifier higher than 1 in that final clutch position. How does a team even generate a 2 fight in a game designed around zeros?
Well, it represents a massive, deliberate sacrifice in their primary engine.
They had to give something up.
Exactly. The top teams, like the Geelongs and the Bulldogs, they invest all their statistical capital into raw, overwhelming force in that first position.
To get those 17s and 18s.
Right. But a team like Hawthorn, they have essentially stripped parts out of their opening strike and attrition phases to bolt a completely unique, highly volatile secondary engine onto the back of their sequence.
Oh, I see. It's like they are driving a car that stalls in second gear, but it has a military-grade rocket booster attached to the trunk that only fires in the last 10 seconds of a race.
That is exactly what makes the middle-tier gridlock an absolute nightmare for prediction models.
Because it defies normal logic.
Right. When you track Hawthorn versus Port Adelaide, you cannot analyze it purely on phase-by-phase momentum, because Port Adelaide has a heavy 9 in the attrition phase against Hawthorn's 7.
So Port should easily win the middle of the game.
Theoretically, yes. Port should grind them down. But if Hawthorn could just keep the margin close, that 2-head activates. And having 2 clutch dice when every other team has 0 or 1, it's a statistical trump card.
It's huge.
It can manifest as sudden, unexplainable scoring surges that completely defy the flow of the rest of the match.
Wow. It completely reframes how you have to look at the round 16 schedule. I mean, we started out mesmerized by the sheer size of the 17s and 18s.
Because they're flashy.
Exactly. But the real mechanical mysteries are hiding in these messy, fractured numbers deeper down the board. You know, the one for Collingwood trying to upset Carlton's clean sequence, the terrifying two for Hawthorn just waiting to detonate at Marvel Stadium.
It demands a deeply layered analytical approach. You cannot simply weigh the heaviest numbers. You really have to evaluate the stability and the specific trigger points of the entire sequence.
Okay, let's take a step back and look at the sheer geographic scale of the stress test we've just mapped out for you guys.
It's nationwide.
It really is. We're looking at a tour that takes us across the entire country over this upcoming weekend. We have massive structural clashes at the MCG with Collingwood and Carlton, and that agonizingly tense, low-volume scrap between Richmond and Essendon.
We have Marvel Stadium acting as the ultimate pressure cooker, hosting the overwhelming opening strikes of St. Kilda and the Bulldogs, while also housing Hawthorn's volatile late-game anomaly.
Yeah, and we're heading to the SCG for Sydney and Melbourne. We are going to the Adelaide Oval to watch the razor-thin opening phase battle between the Crows and the Lions.
Down to GMHBA Stadium for the Geelong Cats, testing their pristine powerhouse sequence against the Gold Coast Suns.
And all the way out west to Optus Stadium, where Fremantle's raw power is going to test the mechanical failsafe of the GWS Giants trailing 1.
The math is set, the locations are locked.
And the clock is ticking for you. You have from today, April 17th, until the first dice roll on Thursday, April 30th, to digest these highly specific picture sequences.
13 days.
13 days to lay these stats out. Factor in the enclosed roof of Marvel or the wide-open expanse of the MCG, and decide how you think the reality of the matches will actually unfold from these blueprints.
Because they're just blueprints right now.
Right. Are the glass cannon teams going to shatter the underdogs early? Or are the underdogs going to survive the onslaught and drag the Titans into the defensive trenches?
Are the clutch anomalies going to completely upend the heavyweights?
Exactly. The coordinates for the Storm are entirely in your hands.
But, before you finalize your models at home, this actually raises an important question.
Oh.
Yeah, one that challenges the very foundation of the data we've just spent all this time analyzing.
Wait, really? I'm looking at the same source sheets you are. The math seems absolute. What are we missing here?
Well, look at the parameters of the provided data. It gives us incredibly precise 4-digit sequences for Season 12.
Right.
It outlines the exact tactical weights of all 18 teams going into round 16. But it is entirely devoid of history.
Oh.
There's absolutely no data on past momentum. There is no record of how these teams performed against each other in Season 11 or Season 10.
We don't even know who won the championship last year.
Exactly. We don't know if Fremantle carries historical psychological baggage against GWS, or if Essendon has traditionally dominated Richmond at the MCG. The data exists in a total, absolute vacuum.
It's completely isolated to the present moment, just those 4 numbers.
It really forces you to consider the philosophy of the game itself. Does this specific presentation of data imply that in the universe of AFT Dice, history is mathematically irrelevant?
Wow.
Our previous championships, bitter rivalries, and long-standing stadium curses completely wiped clean by the math of the present. Is a team truly only as good as the 4 numbers they carry into Thursday's round, untethered from everything they were the season before?
That is a staggering puzzle to leave on. You possess the exact mathematical coordinates for the Storm, mapped out across 4 phases of combat. But you have no historical context to tell you if these structures have ever survived a storm like this before.
The past has been erased.
The sequences are locked in, and April 30th is rapidly approaching. You have the blueprints. Now it's up to you to figure out how the dice are going to fall.